Hey there, my amazing YouTube subscribers. I'm Anime Dreams, and welcome back to my channel. Today, we're diving into another exciting chapter of our fanfiction. What if Naruko was the fox-blooded god? Part 2. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. This content is purely for entertainment and discussion purposes. I do not own any of the anime footage featured in this video. Full credit goes to the original creators and copyright holders. Alright, without further ado, let's jump right into it. Clarice stepped into the grand house, with Naruko and Drew following closely behind. Alright, I brought the squirt, she said, playfully ruffling the blonde's messy hair. Chiron greeted them with a warm smile. He was currently in his wheelchair to move around the big house more easily. While Clarice still had a rough demeanor when dealing with other campers, Chiron could tell she genuinely cared for the young girl. It also helped that they were closely related. However, there was something unique about Naruko, an aura that naturally drew others to her. Given that she was a daughter of Athena, Chiron had an idea of why. He himself had possessed a similar ability in the past. It was still intriguing. Good. As you can see, I've already gathered the camp counselors for a meeting, the centaur stated, gesturing toward the assembled group. Naruko found this unusual, as counselors were rarely summoned for a routine quest. Alright, what makes this quest so important that it requires a meeting like this? Annabeth smiled at her younger sister and said, sharp as always, but that's expected, you are my sister, after all. The truth is, we're not entirely sure. It was Mr. D who called this meeting. That's correct, Amber, Mr. D said in an uninterested tone while flipping through a wine magazine. It's Annabeth. I don't really care, Mr. D replied with a yawn, causing Annabeth to huff in frustration while the others shook their heads. Alright, can you at least tell me what my quest is? Naruko asked. I can, the god replied, turning another page but offering no further explanation. Drew, growing irritated, pressed, will you tell us? Maybe, Mr. D said nonchalantly, flipping yet another page as if nothing significant was happening, much to the frustration of those present. Mr. D, I think this has gone on long enough. Just tell us so we don't have to keep bothering you, Chiron said, clearly accustomed to the god's antics. Fine. I suppose I have to tell young Natalie about her quest, or else my father will be upset, Mr. D muttered, finally setting his magazine down. It's Naruko. Again, not my concern, the god replied smugly. Now, this quest is rather unusual. My father has tasked you with retrieving the Crooked One's scythe. You cannot be serious, Chiron said, his expression shifting to one of concern. Hey, his words, not mine, Mr. D responded with a shrug. Alright, but where is it? Naruko asked, raising an eyebrow as the counselors whispered among themselves, clearly questioning why she had been chosen for such a significant mission. Truthfully, she shared their concerns. Chiron sighed, visibly weary. That's the problem, Naruko. No one knows. A long time ago, the scythe was deemed too powerful, so it was locked away. However, they feared someone might eventually find and use it. To prevent that, they involved multiple people in hiding it, and then Lady Hecate cast a spell to make everyone, including herself, forget its location. Fantastic, Naruko muttered, pinching the bridge of her nose. Only the gods would come up with something like this. Where do I even begin? I'd recommend visiting the Oracle, Chiron suggested. She may be able to offer some guidance. Naruko made a face at that. She hadn't heard great things about her. In fact, people said she was the creepiest being in existence. Whether alive or not. She glanced over at Percy and let out a sigh. If Seaweed Brain could do it and stay completely fine, then she could handle it too. Alright, I'll go see her, she said before heading toward the attic. Chiron watched her go with a hint of concern. He truly hoped she would keep her composure, she needed it now more than ever. Do you think she'll be okay? Annabeth asked. I can't say for certain, Annabeth. You know about your brother's condition, Chiron responded. Children of Athena are known for their intelligence, but that often comes with one of two major weaknesses, pride, which is the most common, or instability. They say there's a fine line between brilliance and madness. Your brother? He crosses that line more often than not. Yeah, I know what you mean, Drew added. He kind of lost it while fighting a giant scorpion. Wait, what? Annabeth asked, suddenly alarmed. But he managed to shake himself out of that state. After making sure the threat was completely neutralized, Drew said quietly, deciding it wasn't necessary to mention the use of extra precautions. Dang, Clarice muttered. What else could she say? This had been happening for a long time. It was part of why she always looked out for him, well, her little brother figure. She wanted to help but had no idea how. When she glanced at Annabeth, the other girl looked even more concerned, nervously biting her lip. And of course, Mr. D wasn't exactly offering any reassurance, even though this kind of thing technically fell under his domain. Naruko sighed as she made her way through the attic. The place was old and covered in dust, as if no one had bothered to clean it in ages. Given who, or what, was up here, she wasn't surprised. People rarely stayed long. That thought made her chuckle. Her past self would have avoided this place altogether, trying to find another way to get the answers she needed. The old Naruko had been terrified of ghosts and anything remotely creepy. She walked past the various relics that demigods had collected over the years from their quests, finally stopping in front of the ancient remains of the oracle. Her body had long since failed her, yet her spirit remained, bound to the task of delivering prophecies. Many had speculated about why she continued this role, some believed she had refused to let Apollo name a successor, while others thought she was trapped by some curse. Looking at the mummified figure with mild disinterest, Naruko spoke. Ancient oracle, tell me my fate. That was another thing that had always unsettled her, this idea of fate. She had never truly believed in it. Back in her original world, the only destiny everyone shared was an eventual end. Some had even worshipped that inevitability. But here, fate wasn't just an idea, it was a real force. The fates wove the destinies of gods and mortals alike. The oracle's body trembled before green mist poured from its hollow eyes and slightly open mouth. The mist shifted, swirling until it formed into a childlike version of her younger self, her ninja self. The tiny figure wore black shorts and a white t-shirt adorned with a flame-like emblem. However, the voice that emerged from the mist was not hers. It was ancient, raspy, and distant, like a whisper carried across centuries. You will journey alone to the nation's capital and seek the one who freed the enslaved. There, you will uncover the path forward. The mist swirled again, changing form. Now, the figure resembled her 13-year-old self, clad in an all-too-familiar bright orange jumpsuit. You shall aid the children of the Crooked One and Mother Rhea, gaining insight while forming bonds with those who will stand beside you. The mist shifted once more, now taking the shape of her 15 or 16-year-old self. You shall encounter the others and mend the mistakes of the past, uniting fractured minds. Finally, the mist transformed into an adult version of her past self, clad in the Hokage robes she once wore with pride. This version smiled at her before delivering the final words. You will find happiness in the path ahead and in those you choose to walk it with. With that, the mist retreated back into the oracle, leaving the attic shrouded in eerie silence once more. Okay. I get the first part, but the rest is infuriatingly vague, Naruko muttered as she turned to leave. Maybe the others would have some insight. That is not helpful, Chiron admitted after hearing the prophecy. Agreed, Annabeth said, though she tapped her chin in thought. But the first part seems clear, you're being directed to Washington, D.C., likely to the Lincoln Memorial. I thought the same thing, Naruko replied. It's the rest of it that's throwing me off. Sounds like you need to find the key children of the Crooked One and help them in order to get more clues, Beckendorf, a son of Hephaestus, noted with a shrug. As if starting this quest alone wasn't already hard enough, Clarice grumbled, clearly frustrated that she couldn't go with Naruko. What concerns me most is the mention of the others, And the fact that it's plural, Chiron said, his tone serious. I believe this suggests major changes are coming. Wait. What's that supposed to mean? Talia asked, voicing what everyone else was thinking. Then, a new thought hit her, and her eyes widened. Wait. Are you saying there are other gods out there? As in, not just the Greek ones? Chiron's silence was all the confirmation they needed. No way. Talia blurted out, looking completely stunned. Chiron sighed, looking older and more worn than usual. Even Mr. D, for once, appeared serious. This is something we typically keep secret until the time is right. And what exactly does that mean? Percy asked, his frustration clear. It means that if you manage to survive the early years of being a Greek demigod and we believe your mind can handle it, we reveal the existence of other pantheons, Chiron explained, his voice carrying a note of exhaustion. Greek mythology alone was already complicated, and history had shown that the Greeks and their Roman counterparts often clashed. The idea of even more pantheons only added to the challenge. That makes sense, Annabeth said thoughtfully. If the Greek gods are real, then why not the Egyptian or Norse deities? But what about the Romans? How does that work? Chiron sighed, his expression somber. If I am to explain this, you must agree not to share this information with the others just yet. I say yet because I have a feeling Naruko's journey will bring about changes. Do we have an agreement? With a series of nods from the camp counselors, he continued, very well. The Roman aspect of the gods does exist, but it's different. How do I put this? Think of the Roman gods as another version, almost like an alternate personality, of the Greek deities. What? So the gods have two personalities or something? Lee Fletcher asked, half laughing. That is exactly the case, Mr. D said grimly, shuddering at the thought. Even he had to deal with that reality. That makes part of the prophecy clearer. Something about healing fractured minds. But the question is, how? Naruko mused, leaning against the wall, lost in thought. It's possible, Chiron admitted with a heavy sigh. But it won't be easy. Perhaps even more difficult than recovering an ancient relic. For now, let's just say that the Greek and Roman aspects of the gods often disagree due to differences in values and ideals. As for the Egyptian pantheon, all I can say is that their demigods, if they exist, are rare, or at least not openly acknowledged. Instead, they primarily rely on magicians for their power. As for the Norse, I know even less. There's something about a grand hall or a hotel, but the details are unclear to me. So I have to figure it out on my own? Naruko asked, receiving a confirming nod. Great. That makes things even more complicated. It's frustrating that we can't help you once you leave. Clarice exclaimed, her frustration evident. I want to support you the way you helped me during my quest for the Golden Fleece. More like dragged you along, Drew commented with a smirk. True, Clarice admitted. Still, the wording of the prophecy leaves room for interpretation, Naruko pointed out, drawing everyone's attention again. It says I must leave alone, but then I'll gain companions along the way. That could mean many things. Maybe I'll meet some of you on the road, or perhaps I'll return to camp at times and then continue my journey with different allies. There are plenty of possibilities. I suppose that makes sense, Drew said, hope flickering in her eyes as she glanced at Silena. It might take years, but the gods have chosen you for this, so I doubt refusing is an option, Chiron said, clearly worn out by the topic. But you're right, you may return to camp to rest at times and possibly recruit new companions along the way. A lot can happen between now and then. Naruko exhaled deeply, pinching the bridge of her nose in thought. Just as she was about to speak, something small scuttled into her line of vision. Without hesitation, she moved swiftly, reacting faster than anyone could follow. A sharp snap echoed as she dealt with the tiny intruder. Was that really necessary, Naruko? Mr. D asked with a sigh. Sorry, I saw a spider, Naruko said with a shrug. Charles, I'll meet you at your cabin in a bit. I need to check on a few projects before I leave. Sure, Naruko, Charles Beckendorf replied with a strained smile, watching as she walked away toward the Athena cabin. Once she was out of sight, he let out a sigh. I'm really going to miss her. But wow, she can be intense sometimes. Annabeth gave a small, knowing smile. That's true, but she's a valuable member of the camp, and my twin sister. Still, I worry about her. I don't think she experiences fear the way most people do. It's almost like she thrives on challenges. She also knew that Naruko wasn't particularly afraid of spiders, but she made a habit of dealing with them to protect Annabeth and their siblings. If anything, it seemed like she actually enjoyed it. Faye, not feeling fear would be pretty amazing, Clarice said, smirking. But despite her words, everyone could sense her concern for Naruko. All right, this meeting is adjourned, Chiron announced. Annabeth, I'm sure you can help her pack properly. Once she's ready, we'll see her off. Are you absolutely sure you have all the supplies you need for this trip? Annabeth asked, her voice laced with concern as she eyed her twin. Naruko stood before her, dressed in her usual attire, just a hoodie zipped up over her regular clothes, with no visible signs of pack gear. Are they really stored in those seals? Yes, Annie, I'm fully prepared, Naruko chuckled, appreciating her sister's concern, even if it could be a little overbearing at times. It was a reassuring reminder that Annabeth genuinely cared. Naruko had noticed how much more anxious her sister had been about this journey than she had let on during the meeting. Must you call me that? Annabeth sighed. Because it annoys you so much, Naruko replied with a smirk, making Annabeth pout as they continued walking through their cabin. Their path led them to a workbench where Malcolm, one of their siblings, was deep in study. Like all of their cabinmates, Malcolm had blonde hair and striking gray eyes. He was second in command of the cabin, with Annabeth holding the top position. More importantly, he was one of the few who could actually understand Naruko's complex sealing techniques well enough to assist her. Hey, Malcolm, have you managed to decipher the other half of that seal? Naruko asked curiously. Malcolm looked up from his notes, his face lighting up at the challenge Naruko had presented him with. He had always enjoyed working with her seals, they were like intricate puzzles that tested his abilities. I did. Your notes on the first half were incredibly helpful, and I was able to piece together the rest in no time. The person who originally created this seal was truly brilliant. Given who it was in your other self's past life, it makes sense. Unfortunately, you're probably the only one who will be able to use it in this world. He handed Naruko her notes back, along with his own findings. She took them and casually slipped them into the pockets of her hoodie, another testament to her skills, as the pockets were enhanced with a storage seal, functioning almost like a miniature pocket dimension. I see. Thanks, Malcolm. I'll review these later, she said gratefully. Good luck with your quest, Malcolm added with a slight grimace. He knew about her mission, thanks to Annabeth, and he didn't envy her. A journey that could last for years was no small undertaking. Naruko smiled. I appreciate it. Oh, and let me know how Project Shroud turns out. I will, she promised. Naruko made her way into the Hephaestus cabin with ease, having been granted permission to enter by the smith god himself. Almost immediately, she felt the intense heat. The forge fires constantly burned, as the cabin's residents were always crafting something. A dark-skinned girl with a confident smirk noticed her arrival. She was dressed in ripped jeans, a white tank top, and a red bandana that held back her dark hair. A small bandage adorned her chin, a testament to the hands-on nature of her work. Naruko, right on time. Charlie just finished your request, Nissa informed her. Naruko nodded. Thanks, Nissa, she replied as they walked toward Charles Beckendorf's forge. Hey, Beck, how are the projects coming along? Beckendorf wiped sweat from his forehead and smiled. Pretty well. Those special knives for Project Zeus Lightning are done. Since you only wanted a few, I stored them in these pouches you requested, he said, handing over the pouches, which were designed to resemble kunai holsters. Naruko strapped them onto her legs before Beckendorf continued. Project Swarm is also complete, But, as you mentioned, your pocket seal has its limits. With the sheer volume we produced, you'll only be able to carry a fraction of them until you refine your seals further. I expected as much, Naruko admitted, taking a small jar filled with tiny black objects from Beckendorf and slipping it into her pocket. I trust you'll keep the rest in a secure place until I figure out a way to store them properly? You don't have to worry about that, Blondie, Nissa assured her with a smirk. They were a fun challenge to work on. We'll make sure they're safe. Good, Naruko said before rubbing the back of her head sheepishly. Also, I might be out of bullets again. Charles chuckled nervously. Yeah, I figured you might be, so I had these specially made for you, he said, placing a sleek black case on the table. Inside this box are additional rounds, but these are unique. Each clip will automatically replenish no matter what, thanks to their magical enhancements. The other rounds are also enchanted, but they carry elemental properties. Naruko grinned. I like it, definitely useful. You always enjoy adding new features, don't you? Well, you're using a different kind of equipment than most of us, so why not experiment a little? Charles said with a playful shrug. Hey, good point, Naruko agreed. Charles' expression turned somber. Hey, take care out there. I will, Naruko responded with a reassuring smile, prompting her two friends to smile back. As she exited the cabin, Charles glanced at his sibling with a knowing smirk. You know. He didn't get the chance to finish before Nissa cut him off. Stop right there. Yes, I do like her, but you, of all people, know that romance isn't exactly our strong suit. Sure, we formed a bond, at least, that's what she calls it, but even the most clueless person could tell she's completely unaware when someone likes her. It would just be awkward. Wow, I never thought I'd hear you give up so easily, Charles replied, clearly surprised. You know Drew is still trying. Nissa offered a small, wistful smile. That's the difference between us. I'm not trying at all. Besides, with this quest, I'm pretty sure Drew is about to meet a real rival. Honestly, I think I'll be rooting for the competition. Oh boy, Charles muttered nervously as he caught the determined glint in Nissa's eye. He wanted no part in whatever was brewing. Later. Mr. D? Why are you seeing me off? Naruko asked, confused. The god of wine was not known for personal farewells, except, of course, when it involved his own children. Looking slightly uncomfortable, Mr. D pushed a small black box into Naruko's hands. Your grandfather, Ares, insisted I give you this. Along with your mother. They can be rather persuasive when they choose to be. Something about things being more than what they seem. Just take it and be on your way, Nathan. He turned to leave, then sighed and added, oh, and good luck, I suppose. Chiron observed the exchange with a knowing smile. Mr. D might seem indifferent, but even he had his own way of showing concern. Stepping forward, Chiron addressed the young warrior, well, Naruko, once you've said your goodbyes, Argus will take you into the city. From there, a bus will bring you to Washington, D.C. Thanks, Chiron, Naruko said with a bittersweet smile. She knew it would likely be a long time before she saw her teacher again, so she hugged him. Chiron, momentarily surprised, quickly returned the embrace, silently wishing her well. Remember, he said gently, you can channel your energy for good rather than letting it consume you. I know. Thank you, Naruko replied, her smile more genuine now. Turning to her friends, she immediately spotted Percy and frowned. The look alone made him break into a nervous sweat. She had always enjoyed catching him off guard. Maybe it had something to do with her past self's love for harmless pranks. Percy, she said firmly, make sure you watch out for my sister. I'd hate to come back and find out something happened to her. Percy gulped but nodded quickly. Don't worry, we're a great team. Good, Naruko replied before turning to the one she considered her closest family, Annabeth, Talia, and Clarice. They had always looked out for her, even when she insisted she didn't need it. Well, I guess this is it for now, she said, trying to keep the mood light. Yeah, but you better put those skills I taught you to good use and come back in one piece, Clarice said before pulling her into a rough headlock, which quickly turned into a hug. Stay sharp, Talia called out once the half-hug ended, before playfully zapping Naruko with a small spark of electricity. Naruko laughed, already feeling the warmth of their bond pushing her forward. She had a long journey ahead, but she would never forget those standing behind her. Yeah, I already know you want me to be careful, big sis, Naruko responded with a warm smile. You be careful too, I don't want you turning into a tree again. That was the truth. Seeing her friend and older sister in that state for so many years had been painful. She was just grateful that Clarice had invited, or rather, insisted, she join the quest to retrieve the fleece. I'm more worried about you, Talia said as she pulled Naruko into a tight embrace. So you better make it back safely. Hey, I will, Naruko assured her, only to find herself suddenly wrapped in the arms of her twin sister. No words were needed, they often understood each other without speaking. Feeling the dampness of her sister's tears on her shoulder, she held on even tighter. Promise me you'll come back, her twin demanded. Hey, I'll be back. I promise, Naruko said, a single tear slipping from her own eye. A promise was something she never took lightly, she always kept her word. I believe you, Annabeth said as she stepped back to stand beside Percy. Finally, Naruko turned to her best friend, Drew Tanaka. A faint but sad smile played on Drew's lips. She had changed a lot since meeting Naruko, and for the better. While she could still be a little self-absorbed at times, Naruko didn't mind too much. So? This is it, huh? Drew asked softly. Yep. But like I told my sisters, I promise I'll be back, Naruko reassured her with a grin. No need to worry too much. Drew sighed, shaking her head. For someone so smart, you can be clueless sometimes. What do you mean? Naruko asked, tilting her head in confusion. Drew simply shook her head. I suppose clever people just don't understand, she remarked before pausing to give Naruko a warm hug. Come back safely, she added, then quickly placed a light kiss on her cheek before hurrying away. Naruko stood there in surprise, her hand instinctively touching the spot where Drew had kissed her. She was momentarily stunned, trying to process what had just happened. Chiron observed the scene with a knowing smile as he guided Naruko forward, while her sister cast a sharp glance at the daughter of Aphrodite. However, before they could proceed, Naruko suddenly pulled out a BB gun and fired a shot in a seemingly random direction. The unexpected action left everyone bewildered, until Percy let out a startled yelp, rubbing the back of his head where the shot had landed. Naruko turned slightly, a mischievous grin playing on her lips as she looked at Percy and said, I meant what I said, Percy. You better make sure she stays safe. As she walked away, laughter filled the air at Percy's expense. Dash. Naruko sighed as she settled into the front seat of the van driven by Argus. With the towering skyline of New York City visible in the distance, her thoughts drifted to what lay ahead. She pondered her journey, the home she was leaving behind at Camp Half-Blood, her sisters, her closest friend, and the unexpected kiss that had caught her off guard. There would be plenty of time to think about it all. After all, the road ahead was just beginning. After arriving in Washington, D.C., by charter bus, Naruko eventually made her way back to New York, a city that, at the time, was filled with cheerful elderly folks singing in the streets. As she cautiously navigated through the bustling city, she remained on high alert. After all, being a demigod meant that danger could be lurking around any corner. Recognizing that she was exhausted from the long bus journey, Naruko decided to postpone her visit to the Lincoln Memorial for a day. She simply wasn't in the right condition to deal with any unexpected trouble. Instead, she secured a room at a well-regarded hotel, the Holiday Inn Capitol. The location was ideal for her plans, and, thanks to a clever little trick, it didn't cost her much. She had held onto the Lotus Hotel card from her sister's first adventure with Percy. Since it had helped them get a cab out of the city before, she figured it might come in handy again. Once settled in, Naruko learned about a special tour happening for the 4th of July. Seeing it as the perfect chance to get where she needed to go, she signed up, though she knew deep down that things were bound to go sideways. After all, being a demigod almost guaranteed attracting the wrong kind of attention. That's when it was time to activate Project Shroud. Seated in the hotel lobby, Naruko pulled out her brand new iPhone, the latest model from Apple. It was sleek, easy to use, and particularly fascinating for any child of Athena. Given their natural intellect, Athena's children could easily grasp the phone's inner workings and even develop apps for it, some of which were released for the general public. However, owning a cell phone as a demigod was a risky move. It was like carrying around a giant beacon that constantly broadcasted one's location to nearby monsters. No one fully understood why, but the effect was undeniable. To counteract this, Naruko and her siblings had designed a unique app specifically for demigods, the Shroud. Once activated, the app concealed a demigod's presence from monsters and even included a tracking system to detect any nearby threats. While it wasn't flawless, since it didn't eliminate a demigod's scent, which monsters could still use to track them, the built-in radar provided an extra layer of protection, helping demigods avoid danger before it found them. As Naruko powered on her phone and launched the app, a satisfied smile spread across her face. She knew that even the brief moment between turning on the device and activating the app was enough to signal her presence, but she was confident that no one would track her down just yet. And if they did, well, she had her own ways of staying ahead and avoiding any trouble. It was a clever strategy. And as for the genius behind the iPhone? That was none other than Steve Jobs, a true visionary, perhaps even worthy of Athena's wisdom. But for now, exhaustion was settling in. Tomorrow, she would set out on her path and figure out her next steps. The next morning, Naruko carefully checked her belongings, ensuring she was fully prepared. In her exhaustion the previous day, she hadn't even inspected the contents of the box she had received from Mr. D. Opening a mysterious box, especially one that could contain weapons, on a bus full of elderly passengers had not been a wise choice. Now, with the chance to examine it in private, Naruko lifted the lid and was immediately met with the sight of 3 formidable-looking weapons. The first 2 had a sleek, metallic black design with extended barrels, resembling a pair of firearms she had once seen in an anime called Hellsing. Upon closer inspection, she noticed that the magazines were loaded with entirely black bullets. Intriguingly, each of these guns bore inscriptions in deep crimson cursive, almost as if written in blood. One was marked polemos, the Greek word for war, while the other read bellum, its Latin equivalent. This detail made her wonder, had both versions of her grandfather known about her existence and each unknowingly crafted a weapon for her? If so, this might serve as a key connection for future interactions with the Roman side of things. A very interesting possibility. The final weapon stood apart from the others. It matched the length of the first 2 but had a striking silver barrel paired with a black grip. The most distinctive feature was a single, claw-like protrusion at the bottom of the handle, suggesting it could serve as an additional close combat tool. Checking its magazine, she found golden bullets this time, with Greek words etched into the side, Koukou Vagia sto fo esto fangariou, translated as owl in the moonlight. That was certainly intriguing. Spotting a note tucked inside the box, Naruko picked it up and read. Naruko. These weapons are incredibly powerful and should only be used against your enemies, though I trust you already understand that. The gun named Owl in the Moonlight comes from both me and, believe it or not, Artemis. Its silver construction will undoubtedly prove useful in the future, but more importantly, the bullets are made of something far rarer, imperial gold. Acquiring them required calling in several favors. Like the special rounds gifted to you by the child of Hephaestus, these bullets will automatically return to the magazine after being fired, even if they are destroyed in combat. As for the other 2 weapons, they are gifts from your grandfather, Ares. They, too, are crafted from imperial gold, though intentionally colored black. I'm uncertain how Ares managed to have them forged, but their usefulness is undeniable. The ammunition for these firearms is made of Stygian iron, a material highly effective against many different beings. Use them wisely. Wishing you the best, Athena. Dash. Naruko nodded thoughtfully before safely securing the weapons and stepping out of her room to join the scheduled tour of Washington, D.C. These weapons held immense power, and she needed to exercise great caution in wielding them. The U.S. Capitol building was truly a sight to behold. As part of the National Mall tour, it was one of the first stops, and for good reason. Housing both Congress and the Senate, it was at the heart of the nation's political system. Tourists wandered the halls, snapping pictures, while a few politicians took the time to interact with visitors. However, Naruko had little interest in politics. That was never her strong suit, which was why she had left leadership responsibilities to her sister. She also wasn't particularly fond of the current president, Barack Obama, or, for that matter, any of the recent ones. That being said, she could still admire the grand architecture of the building. Her sister would have absolutely loved it, especially since she hadn't had the chance to explore these halls during their last visit. While Naruko appreciated the artistry behind such structures, she was not as passionate about it as some. Her personal experiences with so-called artists had left her with a mixed perspective. One such individual was Datara, known as the Mad Bomber. True to his name, his idea of art revolved around destruction, sculpting intricate clay figures only to detonate them in a fiery spectacle. He had even created an explosion powerful enough to nearly obliterate an entire village. His philosophy of art as an explosion was not something she agreed with. Then there was Sasori, a master of puppetry. His concept of art was eerie in its permanence. He crafted puppets out of actual people, preserving their forms even after their passing. His most infamous creation had been the third Kazekage, a powerful ninja who wielded iron sand. Sasori had transformed him into a lifeless puppet, turning his unique abilities into tools for his own use. Even more unsettling, Sasori had altered his own body, converting himself into a living puppet, with only his heart remaining organic. Given these past encounters, it was no surprise that Naruko had developed a complicated relationship with the idea of art. While she could appreciate beautiful architecture and classic paintings, she would never obsess over it as others did. But that left the question, what did Naruko truly feel passionate about? Unlike most of her siblings, who dreamed of constructing grand buildings and intricate structures, Naruko wanted to build the future. And maybe, just maybe, this journey would help her figure out how. Annabeth had a clear vision of designing some of the most impressive architectural marvels in the world, but Naruko? She wasn't quite sure yet. She only knew she wanted to make a lasting impact. Perhaps this quest was exactly what she needed to find her path. When they arrived at the National Archives, Naruko could easily imagine her siblings being overwhelmed with excitement, eager to immerse themselves in all the knowledge housed within. For her, however, it was just another tour. There wasn't much reading or learning involved, unfortunately. Eventually, the group made its way to the memorial sites at the National Mall, and Naruko was finally able to go where she had wanted. The site of the grandest memorial, the Washington Monument, was impressive. She even had the chance to ride the elevator to the top, which, admittedly, was pretty fun. However, trouble began when they reached the Lincoln Memorial. Amidst the restless children complaining about tired feet and other minor inconveniences, Naruko's phone vibrated, alerting her to the presence of a nearby monster. The tracking app couldn't yet pinpoint which creature it was, but the warning was clear: it was dangerously close. How was that possible? The app was designed to detect monsters from nearly half a mile away, so why hadn't it picked up on this one sooner? Was it malfunctioning? Shaking her head, Naruko reminded herself that the technology was still new, and updates were ongoing. She would definitely report this to her older siblings later. For now, her focus had to be on survival, hers and everyone else's. She had a few options. She could draw the monster away using herself as bait, but the tour guide was meticulous about keeping track of the group and would surely notice her absence. Alternatively, she could wait for the creature to come to them, which would undoubtedly cause chaos. Neither option was ideal. Roar. The deep, earth-shaking roar of a lion shattered the air, leaving the group in a state of panic. The mist had not yet settled, meaning that tourists could see the beast in all its terrifying glory. Naruko grimaced. This wasn't just any lion, it was the Nemean lion, of all creatures. And it was coming after her. Of all the monsters to appear, it had to be one of the most formidable. According to legend, it took Hercules' immense strength to defeat this creature. So how was she supposed to handle it with just the weapons she had on hand? The lion roared once more, and the cries of frightened children snapped Naruko back into focus. She needed to get these people out of harm's way. Fortunately, her connection with Hecate had proven to be valuable, and the goddess had helped her replicate certain protective seals from her past life. "Lady Hecate, I need your help. Please use the mist to guide these people to safety," she called out. In response, thunder rumbled in the distance. Moments later, the tour guide, who had previously been frozen in fear, suddenly sprang into action. With newfound determination, she ushered the group away, shouting something about a potential security threat. "Great," Naruko muttered, watching the scene unfold. Strangely, a few tourists were frantically scribbling in their notebooks, but she paid them little mind. She had more important matters to focus on. What she failed to notice, however, was the brief smirk on the tour guide's face before she disappeared with the group. "Not sure what you did, Lady Hecate, but I hope it helps," Naruko murmured, hoping this wouldn't come back to cause more problems. Turning her full attention to the lion, she barely managed to dodge a powerful swipe of its claws, which came dangerously close. Reaching into her pocket, she retrieved several small devices she had created alongside Beck. With a quick toss, the tiny spheres landed around the metallic furred beast, erupting into flames upon impact. The lion recoiled, growling in frustration. These were Greek fire bombs, simple yet highly effective. However, Beck had designed them to burn for only a short time, just enough to buy Naruko some breathing room. As the lion prowled around the flames, Naruko quickly assessed her situation. All right, this creature's fur is nearly indestructible. It took Hercules' legendary strength to defeat it, which probably made his ego even bigger. She shook off the stray thought and focused. Its eyes and mouth, however, aren't as well protected. The mouth is risky with all those sharp teeth, so my best bet is to aim for the eyes. Her options were limited. Her jutsu replicas weren't strong enough for this kind of fight, and her usual weapons wouldn't do much against that armor-like fur. However, Beck had given her armor-piercing rounds, and this was the perfect time to use them. But for them to be truly effective, she would need to get in close. And that was going to be the tricky part. Naruko observed the fire gradually diminishing, as expected. However, as she glanced around, something peculiar caught her attention. The stone chair of Lincoln's memorial seemed to have writing emerging within the fire. Shaking her head, she pushed the thought aside for the moment. The immediate priority was dealing with the beast. She could investigate the strange markings later. Her strategy was solid, but her current speed and reflexes weren't quite sharp enough to execute it flawlessly. Can I direct it? Guide the chaos in the right direction? She pondered the idea. Why not? Sliding a magazine into one of her pistols, she grabbed another Greek firebomb and sprinted toward the creature. The lion roared furiously and charged at her in response. For a brief moment, the world felt eerily silent, until Naruko let out a loud, exhilarated laugh, a wide grin stretching across her face. Without hesitation, she hurled the bomb directly into the beast's open mouth. Flames erupted inside as the lion reared onto its hind legs in pain. Seizing the moment, Naruko slid beneath the beast, firing her weapon as she moved. One well-placed bullet passed through the lion's jaw, carrying the flames into its brain before exiting. That alone would have been enough. However, the madness still had control, ensuring the creature was completely subdued as each additional bullet found its mark in the vital organs. Excessive? Maybe. Effective? Absolutely. As the beast collapsed to the ground behind her, Naruko took a deep breath. With the exhale, the madness subsided, leaving her in full control once again. A satisfied smile crossed her face. That worked better than I expected. I can channel the madness to assist me in battle, she mused aloud. Only then did she fully process what had just occurred. She had successfully defeated the Nemean lion using armor-piercing bullets and a touch of Greek fire. Just as she was about to take a step forward, a sudden flash of light caught her eye. She barely had time to react before the spoil of war latched onto her, seamlessly fusing with her hoodie. Before her eyes, the fabric transformed into a golden, hooded trench coat, with the lion's head forming the hood itself. Interesting. This will be useful, Naruko remarked, admiring the craftsmanship of the newly acquired attire. However, something nagged at the back of her mind. She had almost forgotten something important. Turning quickly, she refocused on Lincoln's chair. But there was nothing there. Then what was that? Did the fire reveal something? Pulling out another Greek fire bomb, she examined it briefly before tossing it at the spot on Lincoln's chair. It bounced harmlessly off the stone before landing on the ground and igniting upon impact. The glow of the magical flames illuminated hidden words carved into the chair's surface. Many have joined this hunt. And you have attained the first clue because of this stunt. Many demigods think that having powers is a gift. But in Salem's past, they'd call you a witch. Naruko raised an eyebrow at the inscription. Did this mean others had been selected to seek out the scythe before? Or had they simply stumbled upon its existence and pursued it on their own? Either way, she realized she was continuing a search that others had started. Great. I'm basically the demigod version of Ben Gates from National Treasure, she thought with amusement, shaking her head with a grin. Now, on to the next clue. Salem. The words seemed to imply that demigods played a role in early American history, perhaps even influencing the infamous Salem witch trials. If that was the case, then Salem was the next destination. As Naruko walked through Washington, D.C., leaving the National Mall behind, she noticed an increased presence of security forces patrolling the area. Strangely, though, none of them seemed to acknowledge her presence. What exactly is going on? She muttered to herself, keeping a cautious eye on her surroundings. That is simple, a voice said, prompting Naruko to turn around. Standing before her was a woman with raven black hair styled in an elegant ponytail. She was still dressed in her tour guide uniform, wearing a composed expression. Ah, so you recognized me, the woman continued. Naruko narrowed her eyes, remaining cautious. Something about the situation felt off. Yeah. So who are you really? She asked warily. The woman gave a small nod, as if confirming something to herself. Not too long ago, you sought my help. I ensured those people were brought to safety and that they came to view you in a positive light. In this city, you are seen as a hero. You defeated the Nemean lion, but to the people here, it appeared as though a brave young warrior stood against dangerous forces and triumphed. I see, Naruko responded, her tone measured. And what is it that you need from me this time? Lady Hecate? A smirk briefly appeared on the woman's face before she grew more serious. So glad you remember me. Then again, I did help you uncover the secret of performing jutsu in a way that aligns with demigod abilities. She took a deep breath before continuing. I brought you here for a reason. The clue leading to Salem holds a painful history for me. Long ago, those in Salem wronged my children out of fear and misguided beliefs. What I ask of you is simple, help them find peace. Once you do that, your next clue will be revealed. Naruko's expression remained thoughtful. And how exactly am I supposed to bring them peace? It's quite simple, Hecate replied. They must reflect on their past. She paused, as though choosing her next words carefully. That is all I can reveal for now. However, I will tell you this, one of my legacies played a significant role in Salem. She endured much of the hardships on behalf of my daughters. She was different. A child of one of the big three. And as history has shown, their children rarely have an easy path. Naruko nodded solemnly. Very well. I will do what I can to help your descendants find peace. A look of gratitude crossed Hecate's face. Thank you. And with that, she vanished, and the world around Naruko returned to normal, as though nothing had changed. No one seemed to have noticed the exchange at all. Naruko sighed, running a hand through her hair. I need to get in contact with Hermes. So, let me get this straight, you want me to deliver this package to your sister and your friends, and this is going to be a regular thing? Hermes asked, his tone filled with mild disbelief. The two of them stood inside a UPS office, drawing curious glances from the employees and other customers around them. Yes, Naruko confirmed, unfazed. I have the drachma if that's the issue. I just want to update my friends and family on my whereabouts. And in this particular case, I may also be pulling a small prank on my siblings. Something I assumed you'd appreciate, Lord Hermes. Hermes glanced at the package, then used his divine abilities to examine its contents. A chuckle escaped him. Oh, you're really going all out with this one, aren't you? He smirked before nodding. But sure, I can do this for you. Compared to all the other tasks I handle, this is nothing. Thank you, Naruko said, turning to leave. As she walked away, Hermes mused aloud, you know, in another life, you could have been my child. In my dreams, at least. Naruko rolled her eyes. No, I have my pranking skills thanks to my past self. Too bad he never put them to good use in his ninja career. Then again, he wasn't exactly the brightest. Hermes laughed. Oh, you really shouldn't talk about yourself like that. Naruko spun around, ready with a retort, but the messenger god had already vanished. She sighed. I walked right into that one, didn't I? She thought she heard faint laughter in the distance. Shaking her head, she set off on foot toward Salem, Massachusetts. Ugh. This is going to get old really fast. Drew stood frozen, unsure of how to process the chaotic scene before her. The entire Athena cabin was sprawled across the ground in the middle of the camp, groaning in frustration. Annabeth looked the worst of them all, clutching at her hair, muttering about the injustice of the world. Meanwhile, Percy stood over a cardboard box, staring into it with an expression of sheer disbelief, as if a storm cloud had settled over his head. Drew had seen enough. Marching up to the son of Poseidon, she demanded, all right, what in the world is going on? Why is everyone acting like this? Without a word, Percy handed her a newspaper. The bold headline read, Tourist saves nation's capital from monster attack. Percy sighed dramatically. It's so unfair. I fight a monster, and suddenly, I'm public enemy number one. Naruko fights a monster, and she's a national hero. Drew couldn't help but laugh. It seemed Naruko had much better luck when it came to staying out of trouble. Curious, she dug through the box and found photos of various landmarks in Washington, D.C. In each one, Naruko was happily posing, by a library, in front of monuments, completely carefree. No wonder the Athena cabin was losing their minds. Naruko had gotten the chance to explore and learn while they hadn't. I believe this is what they call trolling? Yes, I believe Naruko is expertly teasing her siblings, a voice mused beside her. Yeah, no kidding. Clarice snorted as she flipped through more pictures, landing on one of Naruko mid-battle with a Nemean lion, grinning confidently. Hey, guess I did a good job training her. That's impressive, but I have to wonder, Drew said thoughtfully, examining the images. Who took these battle shots? I doubt a random tourist just happened to catch these angles. A mystery, indeed, the voice beside her mused. Drew turned to look at the stranger and narrowed her eyes. Wait a second, who even are you? The man straightened and, in a deep, gravelly voice, replied, I'm Batman. Drew stared at him, unimpressed. Uh-huh. She rolled her eyes and turned back to the photos, intending to compare them more closely. But when she turned around again, the man was gone. Only a distant chuckle echoed through the air. Wait. Where did he go? He disappeared, Percy muttered dramatically. Maybe he really was Batman. That's ridiculous, Drew scoffed, but she still glanced around just in case. A short distance away, hidden in the bushes, Connor and Travis Stoll watched in awe. Dad is incredible, Connor whispered. Yep. But you think Naruko might be related to us somehow? Travis grinned. That prank was legendary. At this point, anything's possible. Dear YouTube subscribers, that's all for now, but this is just the beginning. Stay tuned for more exciting content, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated. Thank you for your support. Best regards, Anime Dreams.